The fashion industry is evolving very, very fast. And we all know that big players like Bestseller, Mango, Hugo Boss, they're really leading the change in adopting new technology. For some small brands, in my experience, or medium sized brands even, innovation still feels like a huge, huge risk. And that could be because of the investment, because of the learning curve, or just stepping away from traditional processes. The benefits of AI and digital transformation are very clear. But the question for me is how can brands embrace this change with confidence? So that's exactly why we're here in this podcast. I want to bring together diverse voices from the industry, experts, tech pioneers, brand leaders to discuss the real challenges, the biggest opportunities that there are. And of course, my mission is to spread the word, break down the barriers, and help brands navigate this transformation in a way that works for them. And that's also the reason why I'm super, super happy, Mihai, to have you on this podcast today. You are digital product creation manager at Bestseller. With nearly a decade of experience in 3D and digital product creation, you really have been at the forefront of this transformation in the fashion industry. I'm excited to dive into this conversation with you, Mihai. So, welcome to the podcast. Let's start up with some general professional background questions. Like for me, AI and 3D technology are changing the fashion industry, but I asked myself, how did you find yourself at the forefront of this shift? Tell us a little bit about your professional journey.
First of all, Charlotte, thank you so much for having me and joining this discussion. I think the topics that you're trying to approach and the way you're trying to approach it, opening it up to the world, talking about the vulnerabilities and the strong points that we have, the weak points that we might have, all these maybe a bit of stigma around the AI integration, all these are very, very relevant topics. And I think we don't talk enough about them, especially at the speed that they're developing right now. It's quite important to be able to understand what's happening with the industry and to be able to understand what happens with the technology that we have today. I I think the first moment where I really began diving into digital universe, digital product creation, it was actually not within fashion industry. I started off a bit as an architect, and I suppose that is just that's an area in the industry where 3D has been always the go-to, always the preferred technology, and that really spiked my interest. And then when I switched to fashion, it was just like a matter of time until I asked the question, why can't we do the
Mm.
same thing we do with architecture with garments? And that was almost 10 years ago when I asked that question. And then from that question a lot of curiosity came and a lot of self-learning and a lot of trialing and error and testing a lot of things out until I understood that this is actually a way to go about things. This is a very good tool in general to create some movement both on the sustainability level but also on the way we create products efficiently and the type of opportunities that we have and possibilities.
What, when it comes to AI and visual content production, excites you the most?
I think we still have not tapped enough into the complexity and the possibilities that we have. One of the things that I am personally looking quite a lot into right now is how can we make our, for example, image production or integration between, content creation and product development with AI a bit more efficient, a bit more fast, being able to target a bit more nichely on the things that we want to target, and also be able to actually, if I'm really honest, save a lot of resources and time. Because all of a sudden, the scalability of some aspects, the potential of scalability is huge.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that is easy from the get-go. I'm not saying that is something that all the companies do right now, and it's such an easy journey. But it's definitely something that holds the full potential of AI technology.
Yeah, I think the potential is very visible at the moment. A lot of brands are jumping into it, big brands, as I mentioned earlier in my introduction. But there are also a lot of challenges, right? It's not, as you said, always easy. It is something where we need to be very cautious about how to implement it and how to get the best benefits out of it. So, as you and I, we both know, creating stunning visuals is not always easy. It's not as easy as it sounds. So there are these real life challenges. And from your experience, what are the biggest challenges creating visual content for marketing, e-commerce, and digital platforms at the moment?
I would have to approach these questions from two perspectives because I feel like the challenges are equally significant. The first perspective is from a brand point of view, looking towards the market, looking towards what they want to send to the market to show to their customers. And the other perspective is what the customers expect and want to perceive from the brand. So there's two different nuances of the challenge here. When we look at the brand's perspective and what the brand wants to achieve and wants to deliver to their consumers, I think one of the biggest challenges we're facing with AI right now is the ability to stay consistent to what the brand, let's call it brand DNA or brand image, or kind of understanding how to control and how to limit the power and the creativity that AI brings, because sometimes, of course, you have different stages in the integration of AI. You can talk about product development and idea generation. That is fantastic. You can play around. It's a safe zone. And then you move into, okay, now we do have a product. Now we do have something that we want to market to our consumers that might have known our brand in 20 years, might have known our style. This is why they buy into this. They buy into this universe, right? So then you have AI that can achieve that, but the consistency and the scalability of this content is a bit difficult. And that is because both a combination of technology limitations or trying different softwares, trying different steps in the process to get to the desired result, and requires a lot of effort to begin with until you understand what is the right way to approach it. But then you also have the questions of, legalities and ability to use the content to a B2C, and ability to actually, depending on which market you're selling, depending on which platform you're selling, there's a lot of different terms and conditions that are still very vague with a lot of the AI tools. The other perspective is, of course, what the customer expects. Do they trust in what you're delivering to them? I think a lot of people that do not work within fashion or within AI or within technology, they have this tendency to just dismiss the possibility, just dismiss that an AI generated piece of work is actually what they will get in the end. I think there's still this stigma, okay, I'm seeing this model, I'm seeing this AI model, this AI clothes, how do I know this is what I'm getting? So I do think there are a bit two nuances, a more personal one to the people, to the consumers, and one that is about integrating and scaling and having consistency of the technology across the image production of a business.
For me, when I look at the technology itself, of course, there are challenges and limitations still, but then there's also the people, right? There's the workflow that you have internally. So I'm also wondering, besides the technology itself, how do you make sure that it's implemented correctly? Like, how can you streamline the workflow to make content production more efficient but also flexible?
When we look at, for example, at fashion and AI in fashion, of course, there's a part of designing products. And when we talk about designing products, then you probably already know, because you also have a fashion design background and you probably know many designers yourself. Everybody tends to be quite personal about what they create, and they feel, at least what I've noticed within Bestseller, within our brands, is that designers tend to be quite skeptical in using AI because they feel that they are taking away their creative power or their job. Or why would people need a designer if they can use AI to create a product? But I think the same way it has been with the way we design our products 30, 40 years ago, when it was all hand sketches or it was all handmade patterns, to the way we design our products 10 years ago, when we was illustrators, technical sketches, and how we evolved with the technology, is the same thing that is happening right now. So it's just a matter of adding a tool to your creative asset as a designer. So I think that kind of shift into understanding that AI is not here to replace your work, is here to make your life easier, the way Illustrator was back then, when we all of a sudden could digitalize and share our work across markets, across suppliers, and so on. In that mindset shift, I think for anybody, no matter if they work as a designer or they work as a photographer, I think people need to understand how this can make their life easier.
I had a talk with a photographer just a couple of days ago, and I think the essence of, or the conclusion we came to, was that it's about mastering that new tool instead of being afraid or scared of it. really learning it and using it to your advantage, because it's also a competitive advantage for you as a photographer or a designer to be able to utilize these tools in your daily work and see the benefit, right?
Yeah, and but at the same time, I meet a lot of people that perhaps from the way they're used to working, they asking why should I learn this? Of course, there is everybody can point out that there is a market tendency, there's an industry tendency, but if at a company level there's not enough focus that this is the way to work with technology. Employees and team members might say, okay, yeah, it's there, but I don't really need to do anything about it because we don't use it or we don't want to use it. And it's all up to like how the leadership perceives the integration and how they want to approach the future business. And naturally, different companies will feel left behind moving forward because the ones that do indeed try to use AI and try to make their work efficient, they are faster, they can target better, they will take market shares. And the ones that don't, they will slowly lose market shares. And I think that's very interesting that sometimes people don't realize that the implications of deciding to learn something new or not or deny it, they extend on a very long term. It's not what's happening in the next 6 months that's going to affect their life or their career.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about how the integration of AI and 3D technology is changing the visual content production at the moment.
I mean, looking at the impact that the AI has already had, you can clearly see that the image production area and the photography area really gets, well, the most benefit, I would call it, from it. Some will call it the biggest impact. But nevertheless, it's there where you can really see the progress. And I think also AI developers and tool developers, they also have a lot of focus on this area of image production. And in the beginning, I remember, 1.5 years ago, maybe a couple of years ago, when things were first kicking off and people were playing around with all the possibilities that they can do in Midjourney, and everything was crazy. Everybody was so impressed. It was very much a playground. It was very much like, let's try things out, let's have fun, because this is quite cool. And I can see today the focus gets way more into what it can actually bring a company. We were looking recently at the cost that in general in Bestseller we have for our model shoots throughout the year. All the in model rights, all the location, travels, campaigns, photographers, everything that goes hand in hand to create that campaign, to create that image, is just insanely expensive. Not to mention that it's a bit limited into what you can do, where you can go, how fast you can get there, timing and all that. And I think this is where people start to see, hold on, AI can just minimize that in a fraction of a second and with a minimal cost. You can all of a sudden experience the freedom of creating campaigns that you never thought would be possible, to an extent that you would not need the models, you would not need to have the people traveling and all that. So it's really opening up the possibilities of both cost saving and the freedom of being creative in image production.
Yeah, I think you brought up a really good point of saying that it started as a playground. And I think that is something, a huge mistake a lot of companies are making, in my opinion, is that, it's like this new shiny thing, let's try it out, let's implement it a bit here and there, but not really looking at how it can benefit the business, the core business, and not just be a fun, beautiful thing we all can play with. So when we think about AI-generated models, you talked a little bit about this just now. How do AI-driven solutions such as virtual or AI-generated models influence the way we create fashion imagery or engage with the customers?
I think one of the biggest discussions that happen whenever we create some AI generated content are opinions about the models. And in all fairness, there have been good results and bad results. And I think as technology within AI develops, you get better and better and more realistic. But there's something about how we perceive AI generated models, how people perceive them, that is a bit it's really, it mixes opinion and has people really have very different opinions. However, for us, it's a lifesaver. We can all of a sudden generate content with models and It doesn't have to be the best, the most realistic looking model, but it still makes a huge difference in selling a style digitally. If all of a sudden you can have this model look and it costs us almost nothing. But I do feel that AI in general has still some space into both developing the abilities to create more inclusive, more realistic models, but also actually making it more, I don't like to use this word, but a bit more user friendly,
Yeah.
more accessible to people that may not have had the time to dive every day into how to refine that look.
Now we talked a bit about the reaction within a company when it comes to model images. I would like to touch point a bit more on the consumer part.
Yeah.
So AI generated visuals are pushing the boundaries a bit. And I'm interested in your experience on how customers are reacting to that.
I would like to, before I answer that question, I would actually like to ask you, Charlotte, as a consumer, if you go on a fashion page and you're looking to buy a new dress for a special occasion, and then you see a beautiful campaign image and a beautiful model shot, and it looks great, you like it, and then of course you see that in a disclaimer that it's an AI generated content. What is your first reaction, both regarding the product but also the general feel?
Um, I'm not sure if I would be the right consumer to ask because, of course, I'm very open towards AI, right? So I would embrace it fully. But I could imagine that some people feel a little bit like it might be off-putting. Like, will the garment really look that way?
Exactly.
What is the reality? How close is it to reality?
I think this is exactly the biggest barrier we're facing in terms of the customers trusting that the product that they're buying into is the actual product they're getting.
Mm.
Because I think it's not that much about how the campaign looks or how the overall picture looks or how beautiful or realistic and all that. It's about trusting that that is the real product that
Yeah.
they're actually getting. At the same time, we've noticed a bit of course, when we talk B2C and the end consumer, you need to disclaim that there has been an AI generated, content
Yeah.
when you're buying into it. Some countries have it very specific that it has to be tagged in the picture. Depending on the market that you're selling, and then as a consumer, you might see the pictures without seeing the disclaimer, and you think that's a great product. And the moment they see that it's AI generated, the opinion shifts. And this trust that the consumer needs to have into our AI generated content is something that we cannot fix today. It's something about the building of the trust within the content that you create. You might have what at least my strategy is within this area is that you mix the two worlds together until you build that trust from the consumer. So you would have maybe a model campaign from an AI generated, but then your product pictures or your pack shots would be a real product.
Can I ask you, Mihai, when you have to label if an image is AI or not, could you specify, for example, that the garment is real but the model is AI generated? Would that help? Is that something that you could do as a brand to make sure that the customer still understands that this is the product and this is part of like a
Yeah,
photography?
yeah, I'm sure that that would help. We haven't tested enough, so I can tell you exactly
Mm,
the general opinion on how that works. But I would also imagine if I would be a customer and I would know that the garment is real, but the model is AI generated, then it will be easier. But then my question, would be here because, okay, how did we, get about making that model image? What technique have we used? Have we actually shot a real person in the real garment and then just used AI to enhance background and the model look and all that? Which
mm.
means that we have used double resources anyway? Or have we actually decided to have, I don't know, maybe a 3D or a real picture picture and put into an AI engine and make a model look from that? In which case, then the customer might still think that, okay, you're saying the garment is real, but it has been entirely AI generated the way
Yeah,
it
has
fits on
been
the body.
altered, like the shape.
Yeah,
But talking about like campaigns or also pack shots and model shots, when we talk about AI powered content or campaigns, how can you actually make them successful? How can you, like, what metrics would you use to decide if a campaign was successful? Because now you said you didn't test it enough, but how would you set that up?
I think most importantly is the skill set, or well, the skill set that the people behind the campaigns have when it comes to working with the AI. And here again, I go back to the topic that we had a bit before regarding that photographers are a bit skeptical about the AI integration because they'll take their jobs and so on. But actually, I think this is a very prime example when AI can become an asset in their CV, in
Mm.
their tool set, where they can become an AI campaign generator because they have the knowledge of what photography means, what good campaign means. They have the eye, they have the experience of working with this. So then when that kind of an individual and a professional sits down and builds an AI campaign and has the right tools to do it, they would definitely come up with a result that satisfies them, which means that it will satisfy the brand and the purpose that we're trying to achieve. So I do think that if I'm not a photographer per se, I haven't worked with that. If I will sit and make a AI campaign, yes, it will probably be great from my perspective because I will look at all the details that I am very aware of. But then a photographer will say, yes, but you don't have enough texture on the skin or definition in this area, which makes it look very unrealistic. This actually happened one time. That's why I'm giving an example where I was very proud of this result that the garment looked great. It was everything as it should be, and then showed it to a photographer, and then it was like, but this looks very artificial. The skin is too polished. Okay, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, so
So
we
they are
cannot replace experts. We really still need them. And we need that
exactly.
human touch, right? Yeah. What is your personal opinion? How does the future of fashion look like? And what role does AI play in that world? Because it's not just AI that you're working with on a day-to-day basis. You're also working with 3D. But what role will AI play?
Very good question, and this is something
Always.
that I actually think quite a lot about because there are so many implications in so many areas of a business that AI can benefit and can impact massively. And actually, when I'm looking at the future, I think this image creation and content creation within the maybe the next I would say max couple of years, we're gonna ace that. There's no doubt about it. We're gonna have a really easy, accessible way of creating content and refining content and stabilizing and scaling it up and all that. I see it happening. But what I think it's really brings value is the data and using AI for data when it comes to creating the right products for the right markets for the right consumers at the right time. And I think this is where we really are missing out. And as of course, it's there. We could do it today, but you know very well that when you have worked in a fashion company that has been so old and has done things in a specific way and has its own systems and its own ways of working. To get that AI functionality into assessing data and analyzing how our products sell in the market and how our products could sell better and where could it's an impossible mission almost.
Well, the data needs to be there, but the data also needs to be organized so you can use
Yes,
it as a good data set, right? I think when like Gen AI is more like the shiny new thing because it's very visible, right? But in the data, there's also so much opportunity
exactly,
that we can use for not just trend production, like trend predictions. We can also look into supply chain management. We can
exactly.
predict risks. Yeah, there's so much we can do with data. So it's good that you bring it up. When do you think something like this can be reality, that you use also the data part of AI on a daily basis?
Yeah, it's it would be a very nice world, but I think because even today, even with we are trying to have a plan on how to integrate more and more of this AI within our data. But I think even today, our ambition is to actually not create more products. That is never the goal to create more products to make more styles so we can sell more, but it's creating the right product at the right market so we can have more market share.
So what I hear from you is that in order to use the full potential of AI, it needs to be used upstream, downstream, across the whole value chain in form of data, but also in form of data analysis in form of Gen AI.
Exactly, because you have the part of course the sourcing and the way we buy and the way we produce and develop our products. That's a huge area that can benefit from this. And then you have all the content creation. I just told you, like if you can save even if it's half of the amount we use today, it's still a massive amount of savings. Um, we recently had a discussion about model rights and AI within model rights. And this is an area that also I didn't realize that it's going to be a bit of a interesting challenge that we're facing right now. Is that we might want to, have shot a campaign, but then want to move that model's background that we shot into a different background, make it a whole campaign thing, or we want to put a different piece of clothing, or we want to do some enhancements or adjustments. And all of a sudden, we are going into a very legal area of model rights and what you are actually allowed to do. And a lot of the model agencies today, they are not ready. They don't have any terms and conditions in place that cover AI usage on the rights within their models.
Yeah, when it comes to hybrid shoots, right? When it
Yes.
comes to like mixing the content
Yeah.
between physical photo shoots and AI. Yeah, I heard that as well. But how do you solve that?
I mean, of course, you go the other way. Then when you don't mix the two together and you develop your own, AI models. But then who do you take as a reference? Because let's say you as a brand, you have a specific type of model that you always book, and you would love to use those to develop your AI model that you can always use for AI content. But again, the rights and to use those as a training tool for AI, those are also not in place. You cannot do that just like that. So I think also model agencies in general, they need to think of a completely new setup, a completely new way for them to do business maybe. I think there's a huge potential for a model agency actually to begin actually selling copyrights for AI models.
Well, but many brands I talk to at least are still unsure on how to get started with AI. So now you're very deep into this topic, you work with it every day. They still feel like it's such a complex challenge, they don't know where to start. So can I ask you for some practical insights and advice on how should brands start with AI?
Yes, definitely. And I think it's pretty straightforward. Find what is your biggest pain points right now? What are you struggling with? Find the use cases that are a very low hanging apple. Don't try to start with everything all at once because it is overwhelming and it requires a lot of times of testing and failing and trying again. And for example, if I'm thinking of a design company, so let's take a brand that does produces garments, design garments, then start with something very small. Make some prints in AI. It's a very minimal thing that you can do that you can already do today and requires very little effort. And then from that one, that sparks curiosity and says, okay, we have this print, can we do design garments? And then in image production, maybe there's some corrections, maybe there's some enhancement. Once people see the practicality that it makes their life easier, then they just are willing to try more and more.
Can you recommend any specific tools now that you talked about enhancement or print creation? Is there anything that you worked with that you really loved as a tool?
It will be depending on whatever agreement each brand and companies have, because of course, if we talk about Adobe and designers in our company use Adobe, for them it was fairly easy to use
Mm.
all the AI functionalities within Photoshop and Illustrator that makes prints. And yes, when Mid Journey came really popular and alive, that was also an area where people really looked into generating ideas for prints. So when it comes to print development right now, and even today, I think most of our designers use a combination between Mid Journey, then go to Firefly or Photoshop or Illustrator and use the ready functions that are very user friendly, very accessible, very easy. Um, and then when it comes to image production within AI, I would say that things changed so much, and we started off with Kriya AI when we talked about enhancement in packshots and what we were doing, and it worked great. However, other AIs come along and do the same things and maybe do it better. So it's always a change in between which tool develops more.
Yeah. Yeah, I've also noticed
Um,
that. I've been lately looking, Magnific AI.
yes,
Yeah, that's also magnific, actually. I tried
yeah,
that just yesterday. I was like, oh, this is really good. So
yes,
yeah, I feel like there are so many tools popping up everywhere. It's really about thinking ahead and like keep trying and not just settling with one tool,
yes,
right?
yes, but as a company, you might also want to be mindful of the legalities and terms and conditions of each of these tools. We have, to be fair, there are still issues when it comes to a lot of the AI tools that we have in terms of sharing the data that we have with them in order to produce the content that we want. Right now, our tech departments and our legal departments are whitelisting and blacklisting tools every day because of how vague their terms and conditions are, or how unsecure the platforms can be
Yeah.
for a company to share data with. So I think that's also something that we always keep in mind, because yes, we can test, yes, we can locally do content, we can locally maybe even B2B use different tools, but the moment we want to
Yeah.
open it up and scale it up to a full company, gets a bit more tricky.
That's when you need trusted partners as well,
Exactly.
right? Yeah. So when it comes to from just a playground to really implementing it into
Yes.
the core business, as we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
I would like you to look ahead a little bit for a second and tell me what you are most excited about for the future of visual content production, but also if you feel like the human touch will always be needed.
Oh, the big questions
I
right
love
at
to
the
come up
end.
with hard questions in the end.
Yes, exactly. Um, if I'm being realistic, I'm trying to imagine the vision and also the way we as humans tend to approach this kind of evolution in technology. We too might think that AI can just, go full power and like automate so many of our process and get everything done so good because we know a bit the industry. But the reality is, I think we're gonna end up into a hybrid universe
Mm.
where everything blends in with each other, where AI is maybe not used from the start to finish across each single step, but it has pockets of applicability within a lot of the steps. So,
Yeah.
to answer your question very shortly, uh, no, I don't think we will get there where we lose the human touch in that aspect, that we do not require any sort of human input to the way we do our things. I do believe, though, that there will be companies, businesses, models that will function entirely on AI and they will be successful within their niche of what they're trying to do. But when we look at the world as a whole, I think that the hybrid, the combination between human touch and the power of AI will be the way our everyday life will look like. Um, and that is based on many, many thoughts and many ideas, both in terms of how we are as humans, psychology, maybe a bit of looking into legalities and technology and all these aspects. It's it's a very complex question.
It is,
Um,
but I love your answer. I love that idea of this hybrid world because I also see it in that way that it is an amazing tool that can enhance what we're doing. It can enhance creativity. It can make us more efficient, more sustainable. It will really help us if we use it right, because that's also our responsibility as humans. How do we implement it in our daily life to get the
exactly.
best out of it? But if we do that, I think we'll end up in a very interesting hybrid world that I don't think we can foresee fully yet.
I fully agree. I think this is and this is also the exciting part. Personally, I find it very exciting to think, how will this look like in 10 years? What is the norm of working in 10 years? Um,
But then
what?
we'll
Yeah,
have another podcast in 10 years, Mihai.
exactly.
Yeah,
And then we can refer back to this recording and kind
exactly.
of add our comments to what we said earlier 10 years ago.
Wonderful. I love that idea. Thank you so much, Mihai. It was wonderful having you on this podcast. And I can't wait to talk to you again in 10 years. Well, hopefully before that, but we'll
Thank
be
you so
close.
much, Charlotte. The pleasure was mine.